We are in it to win it. That's right. So, this is your companion for looking at Wednesday, the 28th of June, 2023. Welcome to the program, folks. We are all suited up. We're in 7 different layers of colorful clothing. If you could imagine some kind of like, not sci-fi fiction, but like a speculative fiction, something more along the lines of like a like Vonnegut or like China. Is it Mieville? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's like there's like a tropical paradise, and it's like rapidly turning into like a frozen tundra. It's also like an isolated economy, and not a lot of clothing manufacturers. So you just see I'm dressed in basically like a mishmash of like really casual like vacation, like Bahama guy, like Hawaiian shirts and all that. But then there's like a ski uniform thing happening, and some of it's kind of like it looks like there's from like different time periods and stuff. That's what I'm wearing right now. Not to like I'm just kidding. I'm wearing like a shorts and a t-shirt. Why am I talking about what I'm wearing? I've got 7 different types of beverages. Today in the show notes, our companions are going to be me, myself, and some show notes here, which I'm riffing off of. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to say up top is that the Marauders map from Harry Potter no longer canon in Harry Potter, where it's conscientious and intentional, like intellectual property theft, all sorcery related maps. Anything that's like not of like a technological matter, but it's got like magic in it, and you can see like an overhead view of the area that you're in. We're still gonna call it the Marauders map, but yeah, it's kind of funny. I was looking at Google, and all of the like most search terms for the Marauders map. I just say to myself, what is that thing called? It was like, what does the Marauders map mean? It's like, damn, dude. Yeah. J.K. Rowling really was on that panopticon tip. But yeah, it's nice to see the detractors out here still. I thought of like a new, because we're gonna get into it. A little bit of housekeeping in a second, but we're gonna talk about a couple of films today, a double feature. But I thought of like a different thing, like perhaps a like a literature version of that. And it would be very funny to read Ayn Rand for the first time in my life. Maybe there's an Ayn Rand movie, and like I think some of the new, just for like cringing purposes, but I wonder if some of the Rowling material is like reprehensible enough to pick apart in the way that you might like Ayn Rand or something. I feel like she might be inspired by Ayn Rand. I don't know. So yeah, you may have noticed no other second mic today. Shout outs to Maru. Thanks for everything. We'll see what happens in the future. If I'm going to continue to just like have movies be my you know my friend emulator for the time being, or if someone else gets on the second mic or something. I had a really funny idea of like inviting my dad to do it. It'd be very funny. But happy belated Father's Day. to everyone out there. So yeah, I decided to continue the podcast not only because we've got the RSS feed up and everything like that, but because it's been like a long time running, and it's evolved into such a thing as like I have enough of an idea. And I will admit it took me like about a week to formulate enough like thoughts to where I thought I could fill an entire episode without having to someone to like, both rudely interrupt and like bounce ideas off of in a productive way. But yeah, I I had first had the idea for a podcast like with a friend of mine who I met in kind of a smaller Twitch space that was like really rad. The show was called Tooth Fuzz, and it was kind of the antithesis to what came later, which was like what I thought would be a really well researched educational podcast called Late Saturday Dream, which like touched on like the soft grunge sort of culture, like Tumblr core stuff. And that was with like another friend that I found who was actually a streamer on Twitch. And so all of the themes for Late Saturday Dream were funneled into like what I call a Bible document, which is basically just a list of episode ideas. And we even recorded a couple episodes, one of them about that guy who did Resident Evil 2 and Beautiful Joe. Totally spacing on his name, but I think he also does Devil May Cry. What is his name? Actually, speaking of, I have another companion, which is my internet today. Hideki Kamiya. Yeah, and then there was another one about Tamagotchi life. I don't know if those ones will ever see the light of the day. But so, point being, I had a couple different collaborators. Tooth Fuzz, which was like just like a casual. It was going to be like a what I would call like a. Some people call like a regular podcast, or a like. I would call it like a podcast about nothing, or nothing. I don't like using the term nothing burger. But yeah, just much more just like two people like casually hang out, which is what this podcast was for a second. And hopefully what we've reached here is a synthesis point where I can do some dumb riffs either solo or with a second mic, and then we can also be funny but also educational, right? So yeah, the subject matter, like I said, Tumblr core stuff. The thing I want to get into, and we're gonna get into with Alien and Inland Empire today, not to be confused with the 2021 comedy short film for some reason. Horror genre fiction, right? So I'm someone who I think admittedly has been kind of averse to like horror films. Not to mention that I'm a plebeian when it comes to movies. I think I mentioned that on a previous episode, but total plebeian when it comes to movies, and horror is no exception. But what I'm realizing is that I like sort of like psychological horror, atmospheric horror, and hopefully I'll be able to explore that sort of space between atmospheric and psychological horror, and then sort of like slasher flicks. I don't know. something like that. Conventional horror, but I feel like on some level the other end of that spectrum is like slasher movies, but at the same time I want to find a psychological slasher. I think those are out. I've seen Heathers is one of the only slasher films I've seen. But yeah, horror genre fiction, we're going to get into the obscure video games still, and then a lot of metafiction hour stuff. Indie games also, but that's something I guess I'll explore more on other platforms. So yeah, I mentioned Twitch, and that I feel like this wouldn't have come to fruition without Twitch. But the other thing about Twitch is politics. You know, I sort of like come from like smaller leftist Twitch spaces. I have some friends who gravitate around like the bigger ones, and I have no particular qualms. I don't know. I guess I get kind of annoyed sometimes. That's the other thing. Misanthropy is like a weird theme to jut into here, but yeah, the leftist Twitch thing is like a part of my story with like content creation. I think I did a couple politics podcasts early, or streams, I should say, early on. But I want to talk about Rosa Luxemburg. Maybe one of the movies to watch would be that Patrick Stewart movie where he played Lenin, and that's the thing that I seem to remember a lot from leftist Twitch for some reason is there's the audio sting of Patrick Stewart going, "Don't trust the liberals, they'll betray you every time," or something like that. And I really don't want to like dirty. Funny choice of words. Freudian slip there. Marxian slip. I don't really want to like associate too much with like the super radical stuff, but sometimes I wish that we could all just have like a moderate sort of socialism. And not to mention blue comedy. That's another thing that makes me think of a streamer I know from Twitch who talks a lot about this phrase punching down. And I have to say, like, even now, the idea of like blue comedy, it's it's something that makes me take pause, and something that I want to like sort of warn myself against, because there's this idea that like punching down is and if you don't know, like the punching left punching right thing, it's like it's kind of like a phrase that people use. If you punch right, then you're situating yourself on the left. And what I feel like is I've been struggling with this a lot is like conservative ideologies, especially what's going on with like the state supreme courts, and like good God, like 22 or 20, like somewhere between 20 and 30 like of these states are just doing these unprecedented fucking horrible things. I'm really grappling with the idea of is punching down, can you punch down from the left? And like I say, I want people to be like reasonable socialists or whatever, but yeah, I don't know how to contend with the fact that like 50% of this country is maybe not seeing reality right. I don't know. It sucks. I think everyone who's been like in the weeds with like Bernie and all of that shit, and even some people in the sphere who have said that it's like it's kind of embarrassing to even talk about this stuff. But but yeah, I'll always sort of be proud to be a leftist. I think everyone should be proud if they're a leftist. So that's sort of like the the background of like where the podcast and where I'm coming from. But the other thing is like I'm realizing that a major theme is and I'm trying to shy away here from being too self-absorbed or narcissistic or something, self-focused kind of. But there's something about there's something about the modern age and isolation with technology where there was like a YouTube video that I saw early on by one of these film review channel. We're actually going to talk about like a film review channel, but it was talking about parasocial relationships, right? And that's something that for years now, 5, 7 years, I've been like, it's been part of like these conversations or whatever online. And I've had a recent interest in like reality TV shows and stuff. And not to say that it's like there's like a voyeuristic aspect to it, but I think there's something about the sort of inherent narcissism of the modern age and the fact that nobody wants to admit to having parasocial relationships, but then there's also the flip side. I mean, I'm one of these people who's like admittedly classist towards rich people or whatever, and I'm like I recognize that that's like classism still. I don't know if it's something that I ever want to like get over personally, but we'll see. Yeah, there are people who are the celebrities, right? The ones who like have the platform and are have all these you know supporters, subscribers, patrons, pay pay pigs. Uh, but yeah, and they grapple with the same, not the same stuff, it's having money doesn't make you automatically wealthy, and like having celebrity doesn't automatically make you, you know, I don't know if popular is the magnanimous, gregarious, and magnanimous is, but so yeah, there's a lot to the idea behind a friendship simulator, and I think what friendship emulator does is takes that sincerity that the I don't know, the some people call them tender queers derisively, they still have with their radical politics and their interest in identity politics and all this. I don't know. They're not dullards. They've got they've got the vanguard almost, synthesizing that with just like this more cynical, not black pilled and not blue comedy, but it's a phrase I've been using a lot lately is purple comedy, which I don't know what that would. It's blue comedy mixed with red comedy. It's maybe that's something you don't want to has weird connotations to it. But yeah, we had a lot of fun early on listening to podcasts. And I'm not going to make this whole thing like a digest about podcasts that I like, but there are one or two that I've decided if they come up in conversation or just randomly in thought that I'll want to shout out. But historically, and this is something that's easy and no, nothing weird to talk about because not a lot of controversy around these people, but early on, Harmontown by Dan Harmon. Well, maybe there was some controversy around Dan Harmon and some of the guests on his show. We're gonna get to like one of the actually really cool guests on his show though. Johnny Pemberton was a guest on his show, and he had a podcast. Now he's a Twitch guy too, and he does really funny like improvised comedy stuff with video editing on his Twitch. He had a podcast before his current one, which is called Live to Tape. It's called Twisting the Wind, where we were saying all this random stuff and rapping and like making musical interludes. He even did a variety of like prank phone calls. This was back prior to 2013, somewhere around there. And it's hard not to mention actually Longmont Potion Castle alongside Johnny Pemberton. I wouldn't. I mean, he's like not this youngest guy. He looks younger than he actually is, but he's kind of like a protege of the Longmont Potion Castle guy, who's I don't know if I think what he does for a living, which is basically just prank phone calls turned into like these weird like LPs, should be considered anathema or illegal or something. But he does walk that line, you know. It's a lot of thing about it though is that it's a lot of just randomness and absurdity, right? So that's where we're at. Or the friendship emulator. We're going to be able to do it on a weekly basis with or without a second mic, just by concentrating our energy beams with nootropic. We're going to mix nootropics and adrenochrome into the old machine that creates the parasocial orgone purple comedy energy. Does that sound good? Does it sound cool to everyone? We're about to do the movies here in a second, but the other thing is we're degen but not anime. How does that sound? Huh? Like and speaking of orgone energy, check out the song Degen by The Robot Ate Me. Degent. I think it's an old some sort of Middle Eastern language word for genie. The genie and the orgone energy. Those could be like the Greek chorus and the narrator of our podcast from here on. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. Robot Ate Me shoutouts. We'll do an episode one of these days about the bedroom, the apartment core bedroom pop, dungeon pop, and especially Deerhoof core. So yeah, degen meaning like degenerate, but not anime. All right, none of this. Actually, I am a fan of a lot of VTubers, but much like horror movies, I should say, the anime stuff I can be kind of picky about, and I should say super pretentious about. Super pretentious. And a lot of what I'm saying sounds like we should be romanticizing on some level, or like celebrating that sort of narcissism and that sort of degeneracy and pretentiousness, you know. And I will say, if we're going to go on a journey where we learn about classic films, from psychological horror to I don't know, experimental animation to mob movies or whatever, we'll go on a journey and we'll learn that not in the political centrist way, but and I'm not like an Eastern religion guy either, but like in the Buddhist sense, like that middle path of checking yourself before you wreck yourself, and make a weird podcast where you just rant and rave about what it means to be parasocial. I think the idea here is we're about 30 minutes in now, and I can kind of sort of take a break here. And we'll be back with some movies in just a sec. All right. Now, one of the things I can sort of take liberty with here is playing a little videos in the background. And one of the things I was really interested to check out was we're doing Alien from 1979, Ridley Scott, music by Jerry Goldsmith. Okay. And 2006 is David Lynch. Now, there is a short comedy film by the same name from 2021 called Inland Empire. Did I say Inland Empire already? All right, so the opening title sequence for Alien is oddly... This is ultra widescreen, it looks like. Why is that? It's... So, spoilers ahead for these movies, obviously, but the opening title sequence for Alien is... there's an elegance to actually all of the... You realize all of the letters in Alien, when written in capital letters in the English language. Sigourney Weaver. And it's a wonderful little vintage typography tour de force. Very minimalist and elegant, but still. They're going on this planet. One thing that I don't think the film ever, and this is my first time seeing it, watched it a few days back. I want to say there's some kind of a an not area, what is it called? Helvetica going on. I think it's a film oriented. It's one of those fonts that you see in films a lot. Yeah. The title slowly appears line by line until you see kind of like hieroglyphics, as one film reviewer put it. And now Inland Empire. Similar spooky atmospheric sounds. Oh god. But this time it's the projector, which we see in Rabbits, which is like a quote unquote sitcom. It's more like a super... So what happens with the Inland Empire title sequence is you see mostly black, and then poof, this projector putting like a little gray bead of light into the blackness, and then oof, in huge, almost like stretched and three-dimensional. Oh, that's so weird too. The longest running radio play in history. I forgot about that. That's something that sort of ties. I think he put it in the beginning to sort of tie it together, make some sense of it. But yeah, giant sort of stretched three-dimensional letters reading Inland Empire, and that's one parallel that these two movies have. But another one is the good old Harry Dean Stanton, which I've been saying lately. I'm in my Harry Dean Stanton era, big time. We're gonna be pretty into some of his older movies. There's one. I think it's one of those acid westerns. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, I think. Where is it? Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid from '73. It's an acid western. So yeah, as far as movies go, I was thinking about doing an acid western marathon. I was thinking about doing a horror in the summer marathon with like summer themed horror movies. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing marathons like on Twitch or Discord or anything like that. It's much easier for me to just sort of watch a double feature each week, do it on the podcast. But I am kind of interested in the acid western one, or the anti-western genre. It would be nice to still do that. So let's get into Alien. It's a movie about a bunch of space truckers, right? I was thinking about space cowboys, and I wonder which story is the sort of genuine article in Space Cowboy. Is it Star Wars? I'm going to look for the first Space Cowboy story. There's a 1930. Jules Verne and H.G. Wells made something called Tiger Men from Mars. Buck Rogers. Is Buck Rogers an actor? Buck Rogers in the 25th century, Oh, he's a fictional character. Science fiction adventure hero from a comic strip. Okay. Interesting. So the space cowboy genre goes way further back than Star Wars. There's obviously Space Cowboys, which is like I think late 90s, early 2000s, Billy Bob Thornton film. And then there's this is not it sounds like something I'm reading from the notes, but I'm just like, yeah, let's take it like I have it cataloged. But I was thinking also about what is it? American Astronaut, which is like almost more like a space greaser film. But it's interesting that we see, space truckers. I did go because I didn't know anything about Ridley Scott. I still really don't. It would be nice to maybe watch some sort of documentary or something about him. But I did go and do a short film review thing on YouTube that was for Alien, but it was more just like explaining some of the Easter eggs. And some of the like stuff that you didn't catch or whatever. And the guy that was making it was this English guy who said he was from South Shields, and he saw Alien for the first time when he was 4 years old and had quote unquote happy nightmares, and was so happy that his uncle took him to the theater to see it. So he seemed like needless to say, he seemed like kind of an expert, or at least a real fan of the film, right? And one of the things, the only thought that I had before I learned a little bit more, and I guess thought a little bit more about the film, and I will say there's classics from Chinatown to Godfather, Scarface. Holy Mountain. I feel pretentious for wanting to see Holy Mountain, but there's a lot of other weirdo ones like Zardoz that I just don't know anything about. Right? I don't know. I'm a plebe when it comes to film. But yeah, the thing that I was concerned about, because a lot of people regard Alien as like this quote unquote perfect film, right? And it's certainly one of the most classic American, if not films in general, of all time, right? It's up there with Godfather. It's up there with Star Wars. But being someone who grew up with like in an era post, I don't know, Pan's Labyrinth, just growing up in the 90s and sorry, I kind of shorted out there for a second. Growing up in the 90s and seeing like Beast Wars and Reboot, even it's an era that the millennials exist in, and it's very CGI oriented. And if there were tentacles, if there were gonna be any sort of sploopy aliens in our shit, and yeah, I think Pan's what's his name, Del Toro. I always want to say Benicio del Toro. You know the guy, the Hellboy guy. He I feel like he changed things in terms of like maybe utilizing some of that technology. Not to mention, gosh, just everyone. Who's that guy that's like the new Ridley Scott? Is Ridley Scott still in it? Like I said, I don't know anything about films, but being someone who is used to video game FMVs, CGI, I'm really trying to think of something like, good God, maybe Fifth Element. I'm trying to think of what like a really monumental 3D CG like 2000s genuine art, like really really popular cool special effects like horror or thriller or like sci-fi thing. Blade Runner 2049 maybe? I don't know. There's so many things we can do with high poly CGI now, ray tracing, all that. But the practical effects in Alien are, they leave something to be desired, and I was having a hard time not focusing on that, because it is one of the only things that prevents me from thinking of it as this pristine perfect film. But what I learned, and this is very interesting, from this YouTube review with all the Easter eggs is, so not only did Ridley Scott admit to like preferring the theatrical release, which is the one I saw, I think they actually reduced the amount of practical effects that they used. They had this actor that they had recruited who was like 6'7", 6'9" or something. It's really, really tall for anyone who's not in the Imperial system. I can't really do a conversion right now, but super, super tall guy. They were going to have him like moving around. But I think the fact that the suit that they put him in was not made of like a stiff material. You know, it's very stiff. And so yeah, they made it. They were gonna like have him moving around a lot more. They kind of didn't do that. But there's director's cuts and theatrical cuts of both Alien 1 and 2. We're not going to do Alien 2 up next, but we will do it in like a month or two. Aliens. I'm going to call it Alien 2. That'll be the episode title when we do it. Alien 2. But yes, the other thing that I watched, and this is a fantastic bridge that is one of the parallels between the films, not just the title sequence, but Harry Dean Stanton era, baby. He lived from 1926 to 2017, which I believe is 91 years. 90, yeah, I think. But they managed to make this documentary about him in 2012 before he sadly departed us. Rest in peace. I had seen the only other movie of his that I had seen, except for, oh gosh, there must be one other, but Paris, Texas, right, where he's the leading man. They gave him the leading man, and he's wearing a weird little red cap, and there's all this weird magenta stuff, and it's kind of like there's like Mexican stuff, and it's in Texas, and there's not a lot of talking. I'd like to watch it again. It's been 5 or 10 years since I've seen it. Great film, very photographically beautiful. But Harry Dean, I was really into Steve Buscemi for a while, and I don't know what it is. I think as someone who sort of identifies as like non-binary and gender fluid, there's this thing where I didn't go entirely into it, and I learned to sort of love that male part of myself and experience gender euphoria as a guy, which is it sounds like maybe I'm being toxic or pedantic or something like that, but it's kind of a long story, and but the thing that started with that is there's a lot of this like stylishness, and I'm not talking about like the looks maxing thing. Looks maxing is like such a funny. The whole world jumped the shark when looks maxing became a thing, or the male species. But you've got Michael Mando. Michael Mando was such a weirdly huge part of my you know moving away from the queer college town, and sort of letting that gender fluid part of myself metastasize, but then compartmentalize it with my male identity. I watched that Tatiana Maslany show that he's on. I want to say it's called like not Black Mirror, but maybe Black Widow or something. Tatiana Maslany plays like 40 different characters. It's really stunning, actually, in terms of like plots and like, yeah, like makeup and stuff like that. But the outfits, the leather jackets, not to mention Michael Mando and Breaking Bad, of course, but it almost felt like he was doing a variation on Nacho from Breaking Bad in that show, where he's definitely a bad guy, and almost a much worse guy, because I could say maybe not so much embroiled in a sort of a crime, literally like crime family, but that dude looks so fucking cool in a leather jacket. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I don't know if that makes me a total dork and a loser, but I think Michael Mando's cool. And Tom Waits. Steve Buscemi was a thing like that, but the thing about Steve Buscemi as compared Harry Dean Stanton is he's a little bit weirder. He was very funny in 30 Rock, and I've seen quite a few of his movies now. I'd like to see every Steve Buscemi film, but Harry Dean Stanton is much more debonair. He's like Harry Dean Stanton is like if you sort of put who's a really icy-eyed guy. I want to say River Phoenix, but I think he had dark eyes. He's like if you take Steve Buscemi and mix him with River Phoenix, sort of thing, or whoever the blue-eyed version of River. That's a thought experiment, Calvin Ball, right there. Who is the blue-eyed River Phoenix? Google. What color eyes did River Phoenix have? Just kidding. But yeah, Harry Dean Stanton was in a lot of older movies too. I think his career spans a much larger time, and he used to hang out with Jack Nicholson. He lived with Jack Nicholson. He was in that movie, Pat Garrett, with Bob Dylan and Chris Christopherson, which I am still not sure if Chris Christopherson is the guy for the Monkees or not. I think he is. But wasn't it Davy Jones and Chris Christopherson? But yeah, acid westerns. We're gonna do 4 of those, hopefully, on a marathon. Double features only here. David Lynch was in the Harry Dean Stanton documentary, which is about like 90 minutes or so. It's a pretty interesting watch. It's an interesting movie that includes a ton of Harry Dean Stanton just singing on his couch into the camera while somebody off camera plays the guitar. He's very old. In 2012, he would have been 86. So, but he looked great, honestly, for that age. Alien is Harry Dean Stanton plays a very small part in both of these movies, but he's just one of those. I'm learning these things slowly, but just like Jack Nicholson, just like Al Pacino, Harry Dean is one of those like pillars of that golden era of Hollywood, maybe. And it's just so, it's to have someone with like a classic vibe, a classic voice, a classic face like that in these movies. Yeah. Almost every minute of Alien is entertaining. It's a good movie. If any of the homies watching this have any space oriented, of course I've seen Solaris. I might want to go back and see the old original one. There's a movie called Moon where a guy gets trapped in space, I think. I might be misremembering things. If anyone has any recommendations for psychological horror movies set in space, that would be fantastic. And also, any movies like American Astronaut. Not a psychological horror, but very much set in space, and a musical romp. Just like Partly Fiction is the name of that documentary, by the way. The Harry Dean Stanton story, where we hang out with David Lynch for 20 minutes, and then Chris Christopherson for 10 minutes, and then sing into a camera in our living room for the rest of the film. Next up is Inland Empire, and I'm going to have quite a bit to say about this one, and only about 10 or 20 minutes to do it. But you know what? It's sounding like I'm my own boss now, so I'm going to go ahead and take another break. And if my voice sounds more froggy when I come back, first of all, that's real bad. But second of all, it's because I smoked a nicotine cigarette. Don't do drugs, kids. Watch David Lynch films. They are drugs. He is David Lynch, the Dolly of our generation. I'm going to think about that until I come back. I'll tell you who the Salvador Dali of our generation is. I'll have a decided answer for you. Inland Empire next. I have have the Petscop article, or the only interview that the creator of Petscop made, right? So Inland Empire, right? I have a pretty not storied. I have a long relationship with David Lynch. I think there's something to be said about his use of proper film conventions. There's that famous quote from him about, you can't you think that you're going to I do my best David Lynch, but you think that you're going to reach the sublime film on a phone. He said that thing about a phone. I don't know exactly what the quote was, but he was like, God damn it. He was so pissed about people watching films on their phone, which is kind of funny. It parallels the debate, I think, between in a small way, it parallels the debate between whether you should listen to music only on headphones or only on speakers. Listen to and that's a Johnny Pemberton thing, the speakers thing, whereas the headphones thing is like a Phil Elverum thing, where he's almost like isolating. Phil Elverum's very emo, and we love him for that. But damn, Johnny Pemberton is very kickback, kind of low key vibes, right? To each their own. But Anthony Domenico, creator of Petscop, and David Lynch are both about the I don't know, cut from the same cloth. And I'm actually learning things here. It's where did he say? Let's find Inland Empire here. Domenico also noted that movies by surrealist filmmaker David Lynch had a huge impact on his work. Inland Empire is probably the largest single influence. He said, the whole thing of being trapped in a cursed film, you can make certain connections. So yeah, in a lot of ways, Petscop is like a video game version of Inland Empire. So with that out of the way, I want to talk about this 2021 comedy short film titled Inland Empire. It has this cover that reminds me of the guy who's like Tommy Wiseau, director similar to Tommy Wiseau. Neil Breen. So Tommy Wiseau and his spiritual companion in the film scene. I would also put Vera Drew in that lot. Brilliant, strange stuff. Freaking James Cameron's Xenogears, you know what I'm saying? Just autodidacts, you know what I mean? Total autodidacts. The front cover of Inland Empire short film on Letterboxd is just like a Neil Breen film cover photo, and it's quite funny to me. But it was directed by a filmmaker named Zane Rubin, who I watched one of her other films. It seemed to be this like really funny like 14-year-old girl like on social media, and it was it was very strange but very funny. Tim Barnes is the writer. He's a comedy writer who's done stuff for Jimmy Fallon and like Nickelodeon, some other cooler stuff I can't remember off the top of my head. But one of the actors in it is River Butcher, who, speaking of Harmontown, I should mention Harmontown is like a cabaret style like live podcast that hasn't existed for like 5 or 10 years now. But River Buddy Butcher, who I won't mention. I mean, he was more non-binary, uh, a dude now. I'm not going to mention their old name, but great kind of art house stand-up comic actor type dude. We'd love to see him. So I was very interested to watch that. It's about 8 or 9 minutes. You can find it on YouTube. It's very funny because you read the synopsis for it, and it's a total misdirect. And it goes like this. Childhood friends Ian and Tim slowly realize that they've wasted their lives selling popcorn and participating in medical testing. Their hometown is a surreal nightmare, but they're too bored to notice. And it's like, it's very strange. He's like cooking a steak in like the radiator of his car as he's driving. They have to like pull over and like flip the steak. And it's just these two guys with like severe dumb guy energy. And I say that, and I don't like to use words like dumb or stupid or moron or anything like that, but we're talking about fictional characters here. And also talking about like concepts and like ideas in that sense is not something I have a problem with. But especially the guy who's driving the car, who I think is the other writer or something. He goes, he goes, you can't sell gravity on you. He says that he got like fired from the petting zoo, but then it turns out he just got kicked out of a petting zoo because he went to the bath. It almost has like an XD so random, like Hot Topic, like like aliens and pirates and robots kind of humor to it. But it's like that line was so funny. He was trying to sell gravity on eBay. He goes, "You can't sell gravity on eBay." But yeah, back to the theory about like different like being trapped in like the performative, not knowing what the difference is between a performance and reality is very much the the whole idea behind Inland Empire. And then Petscop obviously flips that into like, I don't know what is a game and what is literally a video game, what is literally reality. And it's being such a huge Petscop fan, someone who's literally watched it like 3 times in its entirety. It's watching Inland Empire is like a must for Petscop fans, I feel like, because the thing about Paul in the car with the portable Sony PlayStation, everyone was like, oh, the only way he could have had a portable Sony PlayStation was if his dad or someone in his family or Rayner, the creator of the game, worked for Sony and had like the prototype. But then there's also the thing about 16, number 16 in the Petscop series, like episodes, I guess you could say episode 16 of Petscop. You see I won't spoil it, I guess. It's what, 5 years old now, but you see a real life place that is maybe in real time, but it's kind of recursive. And that's the whole thing, right? It's a recursive reality that defies any attempt to put a sequence of events together because it really challenge, and that's a thing that I think Godfather does, where the sequence of events is like jumbled a little bit, but they do it in like maybe a more artful and Shakespearean way. This is just freaking pandemonium. It is, you get that thing. And I'm actually glad that I watched the opening title sequence, because there is no reference. They're not talking about rabbits, which is like the predecessor to Inland Empire, and you see it on the TV in that one scene. I'm not even going to attempt to explain it, but that opening thing where it shows a record player and it goes, well, okay, we're listening to a record, but it's a record of a radio broadcast. And the radio broadcast, almost like Cynic Doce, New York, Charlie Kaufman, one of my favorite directors. It's the longest running play, and I guess we're meant to assume that everything that happens in the film, including all of the Polish folklore stuff, is like part of this radio play that they just tacked on to the beginning in like a 20-second audio clip. And it makes sense because, and I did say it annoyed me. I would say that it annoyed me to have to stop the film 2 hours, this 3 hour film, 2 hours in. And I love David Lynch, and I love what he does with genre deconstruction. But I'm learning that I want to see more of these Citizen Kanes and more of these Godfathers, and maybe lean away from the art house stuff. Coen Brothers, Charlie Kaufman, that's all well and good, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know about Holy Mountain. You know, I'm not as pretentious as I once thought. I didn't even finish watching Twin Peaks because I found out that Lynch was like not involved in the very end of it. But yeah, I had to stop 2 hours in, read about what it was that was going. Why does none of this make sense? Why is the last hour of the 2 hours of this movie that I've watched just been a stream of consciousness mess? And the reason being is because he was writing. There was no script. He was writing dialogues. There's actually a clip of him from I think the Harry Dean Stanton movie where he just has something that he wrote in a notebook, and he ripped it out and he handed it to Harry Dean Stanton, and it's his line for the day. That's what he did. He just wrote lines that day that were going to be spoken, and the only point of continuity for the rest of it was to be the environments in the setting. And you have those little portals where it says AXXO or whatever with the arrow. And there's a thematic sense of continuity to it, but there's no logic to the plot outside of, oh, there's this actress who gets kind of confused, and there's there might be a Polish sex worker who's trapped away from her husband in a bedroom in a house on a film set, and that's where the watching the rabbits on the TV comes in. Point being, it's a mess. It's a total mess that turned me off from David Lynch in a way that I didn't think as possible, as someone who just loves that experimental stuff. And I say Charlie Kaufman's one of my favorites. He might be my top. Listening to a film review on a podcast of The Master is one of the things that inspired me to want to do that sort of stuff. And that's shout outs to episode 1 podcast. So as far as the Inland Empire oh yeah, and I've got a letterbox. If you go to Ruminoid on Letterbox, the top review for, and I want to read maybe 2 or 3 of these that are interesting. The most liked review on Letterbox for Inland Empire 2006, David Lynch, is just a question mark. And then someone down here says, the fact that the most popular review of it here on LB at the moment is just a question mark says a lot about how accessible it is. In other words, not at all. Easy way to describe it is a movie about an actress who takes a role that makes her begin to question and eventually lose her sense of the difference between performance and reality. And then it goes on to talk about, oh, we as humans have identity. And the interesting thing is that they don't mention some of the stuff that I think I read somewhere on Wikipedia or something, which is hyperlinks and the internet were actually a part of the inspiration for this film. The nature of the darting around has been, I think, commented on by some of the more scholarly film critics as this thing that, yeah, 2006. It's also very interesting that he chose this digital camera from 1995 in his 2006 film, but I think part of that was almost because I don't know if there are any other movies that are feature length, big budget. I have no idea how much David Lynch spends on his films, but filmed with this Sony digital camera that I think is only in what we call standard definition now. 1995, and it's almost like David Lynch's homage to early digital videography. And it's also a point in his career, where this is his most recent feature length. Obviously, he spent a lot of time on Twin Peaks season 3, but he has claimed that he will never go back actually to like celluloid film or whatever. He thinks that digital technology, and it's actually surprising to hear him say that he is the celluloid film guy, right? After 2006, he's only working in digital. He said that's because he thinks it opens up way too many possibilities for us to for him to not explore that. Oneric. That's something that I wrote down here. Hypnagogic versus oner. I want to say oneric. I don't know how to pronounce that. Dang word. But oneric is more refers to dreams, and hypnagogic refers more to sleep in general. Etymologically, this is another review, and the third and final one from the letterbox that I think actually touches on some interesting stuff. I don't know if I agree, but as far as the digital thing, the celluloid thing, Lynch's celluloid films have always had a velvety, clear vision at odds with the haziness of their contents. Inland Empire flips that by using low-grade digital to create the smeary, incoherent, oniric look that his movies always achieved tonally. Rewatching the film after the last few Terrence Malick movies, which I haven't seen those. It might be one of the modern things to look into. I see some parallels. For all the incomprehensible montage and jump cuts and half-articulated ideas and plots, the core of the movie is nothing but cliche. We have Hollywood as evil, actress/character persona swap, abuse, the many ways in which men prey upon women, including directing them, for granting one of the most common early critiques lobbed against Lynch himself. And then there's another paragraph to it. I'm not going to get into it. But that is a good closing thought. And I'm very happy with myself for not having to get into any of the supplemental materials here. And we filled out an hour already. The closing thought here is that Inland Empire and Alien are both movies made by guys that I think have their bona fides in some sense in trying to there's that whole concept. You can reach across the aisle, take the middle path, to explain the experience of women. And I didn't get into the whole 50s and Hollywood, and from from the everyday horrors of domestic life, in the days of old, to stuff like Harvey Weinstein, that we could extrapolate from the themes in Inland Empire. And I didn't get into all of the egg stuff, the vaginal stuff in Alien, mostly because I I don't know if I'm the person to talk about that stuff. I think I should watch more movies made by women about women's experiences. But that said, I think that these are both golden movies, and I enjoyed them very much. And I think they have garnered a lot of respect for what, as male filmmakers, as dude filmmakers, I should say, not to be biologically essentialist, but to sort of tell a story that puts those themes front and center. And yeah, probably Ridley Scott and David Lynch are both in general pretty good for that. Now I want to get into the coming weeks, and that's right, I'm going to be trying to do this once a week. Check back sometime between the Monday and Wednesday. And thanks for listening all the way out to this point. If you have, check it out. Go subscribe and like and review on all the podcast apps. You can find us on SoundCloud. You can find that letterboxed thing. And yeah, upcoming, a bunch of double features. I'm just going to list off 3 or 4 of them right here. The Abyss by the one, the only James Cameron. Shout out Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver. Wah, wah, wah. And The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Some say the first psychological horror film. It's so old that it's a silent film, actually. So that's going to be a double feature coming up. And then we got 2 more obscure, surrealist, weird, cool kind of horror movies. I think, I don't even know because I haven't seen them yet. All about Lily Choo Choo and Valerie and her Week of Wonders. Fantastic theme of there's a girl in the title, the girl's name in the title. And then I gotta watch Godfather. We're not going to do any of those other ones I mentioned in relation to Godfather just yet. The companion to Godfather will be the Japanese gangster film Sonatine from the 1980s. I know I'm getting ambitious here, but we got 3 weeks of this coming up. And then after that, we're going to be doing the most unexpected Criterion Channel movies. I don't know. I heard a rumor that Inland Empire is on the Criterion Channel collection, which is kind of alarming to me. But I've also heard rumor of some other things that you wouldn't expect to be on there. Thank you for listening. I'm out. Like I said, like and subscribe. Friendship Emu on Twitter. Have a good one. Make sure to drink lots of water or whatever. Peace.